Hi, and welcome to Note 5. I'm having to re-record the audio because the sound was recorded way too low. So if this is slightly off, please forgive me. Now what we're going to be covering today is the shaper tool, the pencil tool, and how easy it is to take simple shapes to create characters. And so that's what the game plan for today is. So we're going to switch over to Illustrator. And the first thing is the shaper tool. Now if you're like me, I have very little hand-eye coordination, so my ability to draw a circle just with a pencil is not very good. But the nice thing about the shaper tool is it will take a rough drawing, like this triangle, and turn it into a nice smooth triangle. And then what's really nice after that is I can come over here and make this totally different by using the shape builder tool. So I'm going to select both of these objects so I can do that. And then once they're both selected, I can, oops, I accidentally deselected them again. There we go, got it. Now I'm going to come over here to the shape builder tool, and I'm just going to just drag it straight down. What that allows me to do is select both of them. So now I've got something that looks sort of like a keyhole. Now what I'm going to do next is play around a little bit with the oval tool. There we go. And I'm just going to hold down my shift key to get it nice and square. Now one of the other things that I don't like about that shaper tool is it automatically gives you gray, which I thought was kind of ugly. I'm not the biggest fan. And now I'm just going to bump up the stroke so it's a little bit bigger. So I've got a circle with a bigger black stroke and a white fill. And so now it kind of looks like a little bit like a camera. And then if I played just a tad bit with the shading, you would see maybe a more circular camera. I used to have an old camera. Now I'm just showing you the different shapes and how to select them. There we go. Now one of the things that I don't like about Illustrator is you may have something selected and you think you got it, and it really isn't selected. You may have something highlighted. Now another thing I'm doing right now is I'm going to add some text up there so the grouping is easier to tell, because when you're building Illustrator files, sometimes you'll have anywhere from 50 to 100 sublayers, and so that's the best way to keep everything straight so you can essentially take it apart and change things for you. And then I would also get in the habit of naming my layers too. So notice that I went there and I made sure that that little square is selected, so I have both objects selected. Now I'm going to click over here, grab that, and there we go. I'm going to change the color to blue, or maybe have that gradient like I was talking about. And obviously I can play around with gradients a little bit to get that. Now I may have the illusion that I have everything selected, but I didn't. I had just that last layer that I had clicked on, so obviously when I moved it, it was not grouped at the time, so the sphere didn't go with it. And since I have that whole thing selected, I've got to just select my sphere or my circle and then drag it over, and then I can come back and group the whole thing, and it travels together. And if you notice down at the bottom, I can add sublayers. I can also add layers. And one of the things you want to do is you want to make sure that you have several different layers as you're building them. if you're going to have an object, I like to keep one object per layer. So in other words, if I have something really, really complicated, I will do that on one layer. And then if I have a simple object, I do it on another layer. Now here I'm using my pencil tool, and the thing I want you to notice is when you draw a pencil tool, it's automatically a shape. So you can come back and you can do some really cool tricks. Now the main thing is you got to have it selected, and I'm notorious for trying to do something without it being selected. So what I'm doing right now is I'm using the smooth tool that's right underneath the pencil, and that's how I end up smoothing this out a little bit. Because like I said before, a lot of times when I'm drawing something it's really kind of rough shape, and the smoother tool will allow me to move it out better. Now this is another tool that's kind of cool. Watch what I'm going to do. I don't have it selected. That's my favorite mistake to make. So I got to have both of those selected. Holding down the shift key. And now I'm going to come back and use that tool. And that's the path eraser tool. So that's what it's doing, is it's truncating it. It's really good if you draw two lines and you have a small little intersection. Then you can get rid of a good portion of that intersection by using the path eraser tool. Now notice I don't have them both selected, so nothing happens. Like I said, this is my favorite mistake. There, I'm just using the regular eraser tool. I can do that. Just like that. Now that's that join tool again. And without them both being selected, it doesn't work, so I got to come back and hold down my shift key so I got them both selected. And now use that join tool. Oh, don't have them both selected. Holding down that shift key. Come on, be nice. There we go. Now come back and it'll erases it for me. So as you see, it can be a little tricky, and if you're not paying attention to what you're doing, which I wasn't, you're going to have some issues. Now one of the things I'm doing right here with the pencil tool, and remember how I got it from the shaper tool is hitting the right key. I can draw little lines to make it look like maybe an eye or eyelashes, or maybe like I cracked the device. So it just essentially allows me to get a little more texture. Now I had a former student that did a lot of work with this, and she was amazing with the pencil. And I thought she should have been using the pen tool, but instead she had mastered the pencil tool so much that it was very easy. Now I'm using the direct select tool, and that allows me to manipulate the shape too. I can get those selection handles and grab one of the handles, and I can distort the shape. So just like the pen tool or any other tool, you can start with one shape and then tweak it to your heart's content. Just coming back and using those selection handles, that's the way you can grab it the easiest. Like, whee! Just sometimes I like just taking something and just totally blowing it up to see what comes out of it. And sometimes you get garbage, and sometimes you get a really nice picture. Unfortunately today I just got pretty much garbage. You should also know that I was using the anchor point tool there instead of the select tool. Now I'm going to use my oval tool. I'm going to fill it. Sometimes it's hard to tell because I'm using white. And now I'm going to make this black. Now when you have something really small like this, it's very easy to click on the wrong thing and distort the circle that you're working on. But if you notice there, I've got an oval with a circle in the middle and I've got a little eye. And then I can change what the eyeball looks like by just grabbing the selection handles and holding down the shift key to keep it proportional. Oops, missed it a little bit, forgot my shift key. Got another eyeball. Now if I really wanted to, like to give somebody a stressed out look, I could put the pencil tool and make it red lines. But also the other thing is, depending on where you have the eyeball, it gives that a different look and feel. Center versus looking down. And if you ever noticed anything about Bart Simpson, he has really small pupils, so it kind of gives you that look and feel of somebody that's kind of seedy. Now what I'm showing you here is all the sublayers that I have set up, and sometimes I forget to name my layers, or am not sure which layer I'm playing on. So what I do is I come over here and use the show hide so I know which one I'm selecting, and then just like before, I'm going to take these two and I'm going to group them, and I'm going to give it a name of eye. As I like to say, eye. Now the thing that I wanted to point out is, look at the shapes of Mickey Mouse there. Oops, a little bit too fast on the draw there. He's all circles. There we go, I'll move that. Now I'm holding down the Alt key to make an exact duplicate of that. Now once I've made that duplicate, I've got it grouped, I can go inside the group and I can actually edit it, and I have to make sure I have the correct object selected so I don't accidentally move the whole eye. I just move the pupil of the eye. And so now I'm going to come in here and do the same thing again. Make sure I've got it selected. And remember, and I make this mistake all the time, just having it highlighted doesn't mean it's selected. I have to have that little blue square right next to the selection circle, and there you go. Now I've got somebody that looks a little confused. There. Now another thing I can do is I can go into isolation mode so I don't accidentally change anything else, and notice that every other object on that screen has been grayed out just slightly. And then if you go up here to the properties bar, or just below the properties bar, you can jump back and forth between which object that you're moving. There you go, and I jump back here, click on that. And there I've got my eyes back to the original shape. Once again, to move it, I got double clicked on that eye, and now I've got them looking to the left. There we go. It's moving slice. Now you should also know that the quick guides are there, so if I want to keep my eyeballs, or my pupils, not my eyeballs, my pupils in line, that allow me to do that. Now another thing I can do is, for a totally different look and feel, is instead of an elongated eye, I can make a very smaller eye, and it gives that character a totally different look and feel. And once again, I'm using those guides to help me align it with the top of the other eyeball. And then I got to make sure I'm in the isolation mode so I can jump back and forth and then select my other eye, come over here. There we go. Now obviously you want to have your eye already planned out before, because jumping back and forth like I'm doing right now is extremely time consuming. The reason I'm doing this is just to show you how easy it is to isolate one object amongst a group of objects and only work on that without interfering with the others. So there I've got my eyes. I don't like the ovalness of that eye. I would much rather have a more circular eye. But I'm going to just kind of live with it right now. I'm going to grab my pencil tool and I'm going to draw a little nose, actually a big nose. There we go. And there's my face. A little opposite. Oops. That's one of the other problems. Watch what happens. I'm going to draw it again. It goes away because I'm cleaning it. What I'm going to need to do is, if I really truly want to do that, is I have to deselect it and then draw using the pencil tool. I actually kind of like that little smile there. It's kind of crooked, but what the hey. And now I'm going to draw that extra line. And now I have to remember to deselect it, which I'm notorious for forgetting. And then now using the pencil tool again, I'm going to draw a tongue. Come on, gotta have that pencil tool. There, I got my tongue. Now I'm going to click on that. I'm going to hit my delete key. I'm going to click on this one too. And the only reason I'm doing this is to give myself some more room to play with. Now I'm going to select this whole object. There we go. Now one of the things you're going to have trouble with is moving it. You got to actually click on something that's been selected. This is what I'm doing right now, is I'm clicking not on the nose or the actual mouth. I'm clicking in between, and so it has nothing to really select. So what I'm going to do now is visibly come into the side panel, get it so I'm selected. It did it again. Man, I wish I'd get that down. There we go. Select it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that first of all, I'm going to hide my keyhole there, and then I'm going to make sure I group everything, and then I have to click on one of the objects, and that's not as easy as you would think it is. It's actually on the lines around the eyes, or on the lines around the nose, or on the mouth. Now what I'm going to do is just do something really simple, like I'm going to make like a Mr. Potato Head, or the egg that fell off of the what's the old wives' tale about that? Oh, I can't remember it. I could also make it a face on like a basketball, or this could be the man on the moon. You know, just several different ideas like that. Another thing is, I don't have to stay with a circle. I can also go with triangles, but I'll do that in a bit. But right now I'm just going to add a little bit of hair. There we go, using my pencil tool again. And it just changes the complexity of the picture. Now obviously I would want to do a little bit better job and not have it be a bald spot at the top. That really does look bad. You know, and the other thing that's kind of fascinating is when I did the show high with the circle, I could have just left without that. Or I could have used a semicircle to make the face look a lot nicer too. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of all that hair. So I'm going to select it. There we go. One symbol layer at a time, then I hit the delete key and it's gone. Now, like I said before, I'm going to change it to a different shape. I'm going to use the Polygon Tool, so I'm just going to click and drag. And remember, by default, it's going to give me this object, and then I can use the down arrow to get a triangle. And then what I'll do is shape it up like that. And grab my selection tool. Got to make sure I grab the actual line. So that's one of the disadvantages of having no fill. If I had had a fill, I'd have more area inside the triangle to grab and move it. But then I would have to have the triangle be aligned in the back, which is not necessarily a bad thing either. There we go. I'm going to draw an oval. And now that fish that I had, I'm going to draw a semicircle. I've got that open. Now I'm going to use the pencil tool to draw some fins. There we go. I'm going to realign them. Now obviously I'm doing this very quickly. If I was to really do it in real life, I'd spend a lot more time, because I'm a little bit more of a perfectionist than what this is allowing me to do. But this is also another subject you might want to think about, is because at the very beginning, a lot of the artists that were drawing their characters, if you look at them, some of the first characters, they look kind of rough and don't look at all that good. Now there I just drew my tail fin and turned it yellow. I don't know if that looks good. Red doesn't look much better. I'm going to close that little fin off right there. And I got to have the whole thing selected. Oops. Hold down my shift key. There we go. And then come back here, select it again. I can close it off that way. I could actually probably leave it just that way too if I wanted to. There we go. Now he's got a green fin. This is one ugly colored fish. There we go. Move it around. Select some different layers that I want to play with. Oh, I hate when I do that. Notice that I am not selecting the actual, I've got that sublayer highlighted or that group highlighted, but I've not selected anything inside of it. Now, once I've done that, you'll notice that it's grouped. I've got those little blue boxes on the right hand side, and then it allows me to move everything around. And there we go. I'm going to ungroup it so I've got an eye. And then I can make the little eye smaller or more circular. If I would have held down the key there and resize it. You know, this triangle guy, I can now make him a cyclops. I can take that circle and make it a lot bigger if I wanted to. The main thing about whatever you do, it's all about creativity and having some fun. So there is that picture. Now I clicked on a link right there, and it's going to show you how easy it is to draw each one of these subjects. Like there's Mickey Mouse, and please notice that it's, you know, several circles, several ovals, the pencil tool, the mouth. You know, these are all things that we just did very rough and dirty, and if you spent some time, you could do the same thing. Well, here we go again. Like I said, just notice that these are semi-ovals around the eye. The eyes are ovals. The pupils are real close to the edge of the opal, so that's why it's looking. And then there's SquarePants, SpongeBob. And notice these squares, rectangles, some ovals, another rectangle. eyes are just circles with beady little things. And how I did that is I just placed it. Now I'm going to place good old Bart Simpson, and I want to show you another thing you need to be aware of. So I'm going to double click right there, and notice how big Bart is. And once again, Bart Simpson is a series of shapes too. Obviously the eyes are circles, the beady eyes, and then I've got a bunch of rectangles up at the top for his hair. His head is essentially a rectangle, rounded rectangle. Now I also want you to notice that I've got my palette, and good old Bart is running off the side. So what it really looks like, if I was to print it, is this is what it would look like, one of the views. Now I forgot to show you the different types of views that you can play with. Notice how his legs were cut off. Just because they show it doesn't mean. So everything in this white area is what's going to be printed. So if I wanted Bart to show up completely, I would have to make him a little bit smaller and then drag him all the way up. It actually doesn't delete that portion, it just doesn't print that portion. That's what's going to be viewable. There's good old Mickey Mouse again. Got the eyes, got the nose, got the mouth. These very, very, very simple shapes. You know, oval tool would be the #1 thing you would play with. The pencil tool would be #2. Like I said, we've done it all before. Just quick and dirty, not as nicely as they did. Now another thing you can do is you can play around with the stroke. One of the things that drives me crazy about the stroke is when you change how the stroke is going to be displayed. Like right here, I've decided to change that stroke. Notice the look and feel of it. It gives you a totally different look. One of the videos, they do several lines and they utilize these different shapes that you can play with. You know, obviously the uniform there, the width profile, I actually should say. So you're playing around with how the stroke is going to be displayed. Now the one thing you got to remember with that is when you're dealing with those strokes is you may change that profile and it will go back to 1 sometimes, more often than not. Now if you really want to have a complex picture to try to recreate, there's an example right there with this Ashoka Tano, and still a lot of lines, a lot of eyes that are oval, a lot of triangles. The face is kind of a triangular shape, although it's rounded down at the bottom. And once again, Bart Simpson, those triangles at the top. Now another thing I would do is come and add another artboard and name my artboards, and then I can grab one and drag it over to the other. And just like naming your layers, you should really name your artboards. It makes a lot more sense to you. You know, when you're doing it, you really don't think you need to do it, but maybe 6 months or a year later you have to come back and modify it. That's going to make all the difference in the world. And then the other thing I like to do is I like to have a layer for each artboard, or separate layers for each artboard. That way I don't accidentally delete one or make modifications to one that changes or has impact on the others. Now another thing that I recommend, if you're going to try to recreate a picture, is select it, place it on your page, and then change the opacity so it's a lot lighter. And then that way you can more or less sketch over it. And you notice that I dropped it down quite a bit. I can't remember the exact